All right, hi, and welcome everyone to the Renting in the Amsterdam Metropolitan Area webinar. So, what are we going to be discussing in today's webinar? Here's a breakdown. We're going to be discussing the types of apartments that might suit your need, the areas in which you might want to live in Amsterdam, the general costs of living in Amsterdam and the metropolitan areas, resources that might help you search the market, types of contracts that you're going to come across when you move to Amsterdam, and general other things to consider, tips and tricks, and our process, of course. So let's begin with the Amsterdam housing market. So here are some words that you've probably seen the Amsterdam housing market described as: fast, expensive, the houses are small, they are nice, it's an unfair market, it's dynamic, it's expensive. And yes, all of these do have some truth to them. It is true, the market here moves extremely quickly and it is quite ruthless, but by no means should that scare you. There are ways to maneuver around it if you know exactly what to look out for and what to ask. So don't let these things put you down. First, let's talk about why the market does move so quickly and why it is notoriously hard to get an apartment in Amsterdam. So out of the 57% of the houses that are in Amsterdam, this is in the regulated sector. And this is what I would call the social housing. So there's a base rent of €722 max per month. And to get on and to be eligible for a property on the regulated sector, you need to be on a waiting list for 10 to 14 years and you need to be a Dutch national. So this 57% of properties straight away is not available to expats, which leaves us then with the 43% left of the houses, which is the free sector. So in this section, in the free sector, the rent is not regulated and landlords can charge as much as they like for their apartment in rent, but of course it needs to be in line with the market or else they won't get any tenants. So there is a kind of average price. You're not going to have crazily priced apartments willy-nilly here and there. It's all kind of in line. But going back to that 43%, of that 43% of properties in the free sector, 90% of those are privately owned and inhabited, which leaves us with that 10%, which is the private sector, which is available for expats. So this kind of gives you an idea as to why the market is so ruthless for expats, especially. Now, here's just another more visual way to put this forward, because I would like to manage your expectations in this respect. So that tiny sliver is what would be available for you guys to rent and for me to rent as well. I'm going to quickly now run through types of apartments that you'll come by in Amsterdam and the Netherlands and what they might mean and what might suit your needs. So there are three main types of apartments. I'll start with the top left, which is the shell apartment. So as you can see, it is what it is called. It is a shell apartment. There are no floorings. Of course, it's concrete, but there's no wood floors or parquet put down. And most of the time, the walls are, as you can see it in that picture, so you'd need to focus on painting the walls yourself. Sometimes the walls can come painted, but you'll also need to put in all of your fixtures. And it's very much just, yeah, as it's described, a shell. So the benefits of getting a shell there are quite a few to them. The rent is significantly cheaper than getting a furnished or unfurnished property, of course, but also there's pretty much no way that you could have any damage. So you would be able to go in to move in with pets most likely. And also you would be pretty much sure to get all of your deposit back. So that's something to think about the shell. Then we'll move down to the bottom left, which is the unfurnished apartment. So the unfurnished apartment is ready to move into. All you need to get is your soft furnishings, such as your curtains, your bed, your sofa. But other than that, the floors are all in. The walls are painted, you've got all your fixtures, it's all ready to move in, but you'll just need your sofa and your bed, etc., etc. And obviously crockery as well. Another thing to mention with unfurnished apartments is sometimes they'll come with a washing machine and dryer, sometimes they won't. So that's just something to look out for. That's not a blanket rule that they will come with a washing machine and dryer. So again, just to start letting you know, thinking that's something to think about. And the third type of apartment I'll talk about now is the furnished apartment, and that is on the top right of your screen. So it does what it says on the tin. It is a completely fully furnished apartment, which also includes bed linens most of the time, and crockery, and knives and forks. And all you'd need is your suitcase filled with clothes, and you can just roll on up and get ready to move in. So now this is just some personal insight, personal preference on my behalf. So whether it counts for you, I don't know, but just my personal advice, if you're looking to stay somewhere longer term, looking for somewhere furnished might not be preferable, because it does kind of feel like you're living in an Airbnb, and it doesn't feel like your own proper home because it's not your own things. So if you're looking for a longer term, I'd say go for an unfurnished apartment. And if you're looking for very long term and can be bothered to put in your own floors, then a shell's a really good opportunity to save some rent and really make the house feel like your own. Now, where would you like to live in Amsterdam or the metropolitan areas? So this is a quick map of Amsterdam, and looking at this, it does look quite large. But something that I really like to stress to our clients and to new expats is that you can pretty easily cycle from one end of the city to the other within about 40 minutes by bike. So even though it looks quite big and there are lots of different neighborhoods, everywhere is so close and everywhere is so easily accessible by bike. It's a lot faster also than using public transport, which I thought was quite bizarre when I first moved here. When I first moved here, I used to like taking metros and trams. That's what I was used to. But now all I do is cycle. So great for cardio and a good time saver as well. So that's a good tip. But again, just quickly going back to this picture, even though things do look further away, everywhere is very easy and easy to access. Another thing, not only is it easy to access throughout the Amsterdam city centre, the metropolitan cities are also quick access to Amsterdam city central. So for example, let's start off talking about Haarlem. So Haarlem, we kind of call it the mini Amsterdam. It's got all of the charm of Amsterdam in that it's got canals and beautiful historical buildings. It's just a bit smaller and you don't get tourists, which a lot of people do like. But something that I would like to say now is that it is quite up and coming. More and more people are wanting to move there because it's the mini Amsterdam and because it was significantly cheaper than Amsterdam, but we are seeing prices rise there because it is more desirable. But the main point that I wanted to make is it is only 15 minutes by train from Haarlem city centre to Amsterdam city centre by train. So even though it's a train commute, it's really not difficult and it doesn't take a long time. And the same goes for Hilversum. It looks very, very far away, more up and coming, less kind of Amsterdam charm, but still a very good place to go. Again, only 20 minutes away to Amsterdam Central. Hoofddorp and Almere as well, around half an hour. You'll see on the Amstelveen that it's got 2 times. Now, the reason why it's got 2 times is because at the moment it does take about 40 minutes by public transport, but they are creating a metro line to bring you from Amstelveen to Amsterdam city centre, and when that is complete, I believe it should be complete this year. Don't quote me on that, but it should be complete soon. And then once that's going, it'll take 20 minutes to get to the city centre. Now we'll talk about the costs, about living in Amsterdam and the metropolitan areas, because something that I'd like to say is that Amsterdam is very expensive. If you move to Amsterdam and decide to live in the city centre, you are paying to live in Amsterdam. Whereas if you were to go on to one of the metropolitan cities surrounding Amsterdam, you'll probably get more for your money in terms of property. And this is what I mean. So say, for example, if we talk about the studios, you can get studios from, when I say studio, it is just a 1-room. So with your bedroom, living room, kitchen, and dining zone is all just one big open space. Those in Amsterdam city centre can vary between 1,100 to 1,400, whereas in Hilversum it's almost half price. So the average is 650 to 900 euros. Now these are of course averages, but I think this is a very good ballpark for you to be able to kind of start thinking about where you might want to move. And again, moving up, so say for example, going to 2 bedrooms, a 2-bedroom in Amsterdam would be 1,600 to 2,400. Again, whereas in Hilversum, 1,200 to 1,600. And now with Haarlem, as you can see, the prices, they do differ, but they're not as significant as Hilversum because Haarlem is becoming more and more desirable to live there. Additional costs that you'll need to consider when you move to Amsterdam are, first off, the deposit. So the deposit is going to be returned to you at the end of your tenancy if you don't damage the property, of course. So the deposit is there as a safety deposit for the landlord. So if at the end of the tenancy, during the checkout, they notice that windows are broken and there's been lots of damage, they can use that money from your deposit to fix the problems. But what you'll need to do or be prepared for is, in order to get your keys for your check-in and in order to actually do your check-in, the landlord or agent needs to have already received the 2 months rent deposit and the first month's rent. So you'll need to be prepared to have the value of 3 months worth of rents to pay in order to get the check-in, in order to get your keys. Another thing that I'd like to say is, when it comes to the 2 months rent deposit, that is the general average. This can of course differ between landlords and agents and properties, but I'd say probably around 80% of the time they request a 2-month deposit. Sometimes they might go for 1 month's rent if the finish of the apartment isn't very slick, shall we say. And on the flip side, if you were to get a full luxury apartment, then they might require 3 months rent. But those are anomalies. Most of the time it will be 2 months rent as a standard. So just go by that unless otherwise indicated. Occasionally a landlord might be open to negotiation, but like I said, just go by the 2-month rent unless otherwise indicated. When it comes to utilities, this would be water, gas, and electricity. Now this does vary depending on your usage, of course. So the more water you use and the more energy you use, the more expensive your bills will be. But this varies between 100 and 150 euros per month. And then for TV and internet, that's on top of your utilities. Again, this depends on the subscription or package that you'd purchase. And this is between 50 and 100 euros per month. Obviously, if you want to save on bills, keep your heating low and have short showers. But yeah, obviously it's all manageable, but this is just a benchmark, a good idea of how you can start doing your calculations. And then the third cost that I'll talk about now is municipality taxes. So this is specifically about the Amsterdam municipality taxes. The municipality taxes in the neighboring cities vary a bit, but again, this is a good ballpark, a good benchmark for you to start doing your calculations at. So for a 1-person household, it is 443 euros per year. And the municipality taxes cover the cost of waste disposal, water cleanliness, fixing roads, just general tax. And with this payment, you can either decide to pay it off in one fell swoop as soon as you get the bill, or if you'd like, you can contact the municipality and ask if you can sort out a payment plan. For a 2+ household in Amsterdam, it is more expensive because you would create more waste in theory. And so at that point, that would be 643 euros per year. Now, like I said, this does vary depending on the different metropolitan cities, but not too significantly that you wouldn't be aware. So this is, like I said, a good benchmark of where to start. I'll now discuss some resources that will help you search the market. So there are search platforms, for example, Pararius and Funda. Funda does do a lot of purchasing properties, so properties for sale rather than renting. There are, of course, some rental properties on there as well, so feel free to have a look. Maybe you might even want to start buying, who knows? But Pararius is all rental. So those are some good search platforms to go for. Now here are some, and I'll talk you through some corporations and some investors. So something that I'd like to mention with corporations and investors are, it's harder to secure a house or secure a property with them because they tend to go via a lottery. So rather than the landlord individually reading each tenant's offer, they tend to just pick out of the hat, and if it's suitable and they've got the paperwork in order, they'll just give it to you. So it's harder to control with larger corporations and investors because they've got so many units and they start seeing people as numbers rather than people. So it is harder to kind of maneuver. It's not impossible, but it does take longer. So just so that you're aware. And then when it comes to social platforms, apologies, technical difficulties. Here we go. And then when it comes to social platforms, there's Craigslist, of course, Facebook, and CameraNet. Now you can absolutely find flats on these search platforms, on these social platforms, and you can also find housemates. But something that this is the first time I'll mention it now, but I'm sure I'm going to mention it throughout the webinar. Please make sure that you can register at the property. So you need to be able to register at the property in order to get your BSN number, which is your social security number. And without the BSN, then you won't be legal to live here. You won't be able to get a job. You won't be able to open a bank account. If you come across an apartment or a room that is for let, that they say registration is not possible, stay away. It is illegal. It is a sublet. And if you get found out, then bad things can happen. You'd get kicked out, and yeah, it's just not worth the trouble. Even if they say, oh yeah, I'll be gone for 6 months, registration not possible, but it can be a good foothold whilst you find an apartment. If you can't register there, do not, just stay away from it. It's bad news. Now moving on to housing agents. These are housing agents that we work with quite closely and we trust fully. So there's Relo, JLG Real Estate, HB Housing, Interhouse, Aham Vastgoed, Koopsmakelaardij, Noor Estates, and Broersma. Now, these are all estate agents that have their own portfolio of properties online. So you can go and browse their websites directly. Most of the time they will appear on Parias and Funda, of course, but if you just want to go straight to the agents, these are the names that you can go for. And then if you are a young professional or a professional just wanting to come by and wanting to find a flatmate who you would then be able to rent a 2-bed apartment with, then you can use Tenant Hub. Tenant Hub is a platform that Expat Housing Network has put together. It is free to use, and it essentially allows you to get in contact with other people in your situation. So you'd go in, say where you're working for, who you're working for, neighborhoods you're interested in, and your budget, and then that will match you up with other people looking at the same criteria, and then you can start talking, and then from there decide if sharing a house is something that you'd like to do. This brings us on to apartment sharing. So a good thing to know is the local law currently prohibits the sharing of an apartment by more than 2 unrelated adults. So of course in your family, this doesn't matter, you're a family, you're a unit. But when it comes to young professionals wanting to a house share, you can only have 2 people who can register there legally, who are unrelated, unless the landlord has a specific permit saying that more than 2 people can register at this property. Now this permit does cost money, so not many landlords like to purchase it because they think their flat will get rented out anyway. So if you're looking to share with more than 2 people, please note it's not impossible, but your pool of properties will be significantly smaller and it will be harder and more competitive. So if you're looking to share, I would recommend looking to share by 2. And then just be aware that if you're looking to share with more than 2, it'll be more difficult, so significantly more difficult, but not impossible. If in an existing rental, make sure that you can register and that you have permission to live there from the landlord. So for example, if you were going onto one of the social media platforms, so Craigslist, Facebook, or Camernet, and you found a property that they said you could register, still just go and talk to the landlord. Don't do the deal directly with the tenant. Just contact the landlord and say, hey, are you aware that I'm going to be moving in? Can I see the contract, etc., etc. So make sure that you deal with the landlord, not the tenant, just to make sure that everyone is aware of what's going on. And remember also, landlords are people too. So feel free to ask. Communication is always key. I just got a note saying that my internet connection is unstable. So if at any point I cut out, please feel free to send me a message. If not, I'll jump back in as quickly as possible, but just so that you're aware that that might happen. And the last thing I'm going to mention, but bring you back to, is Tenant Hub. So if you wanted to avoid scams by finding your own rental and then finding a flatmate and then finding a rental apartment together, you can always find a potential flatmate by going onto Tenant Hub, finding your flatmate, and then from there creating your search criteria and looking for a flat together. So that's just something for you to think about as well. I'm going to now talk you through the types of contracts that you are going to see in Amsterdam. So in the Netherlands anyway, there are 2 main types of contracts. I'll start with the Model B, which is the definite contract, which is with a maximum of 2 years. So with the Model B contract, it's a maximum of 2 years. And the good thing about this contract is that there is no minimum time period. So say, for example, if you were to move in and you thought, oh, the road's too busy, too noisy outside, I can't live here, then you just need to give 1 calendar month's notice and you can break out of that contract. Another thing to know is that, yes, Model B contracts are mostly 2 years, but occasionally you might find the anomaly where a landlord or agent will say, oh, it's a Model B contract, but only for 1 year. It's possible, but just so that you're aware, most of the time it is 2 years. And then the second contract that I'll talk about now is the indefinite contract, also known as the Model A contract. So the Model A contract is a minimum time period of 1 year, and then after that year, the contract moves into a monthly rolling contract, and it's very difficult to be evicted here. Here, and compared to the UK anyway, tenants have lots of rights. As long as you abide by your contract, you cannot get evicted. As long as you're paying your rent, you cannot get evicted. And yeah, the tenant rights here are sublimely better than in the UK. But so technically, with this rolling contract, you could, yeah, as the contract state, lives here and live there indefinitely. If needs be, if, for example, you are unsure if your job might let you go, or if your job might relocate you within that year, you can ask to put in a diplomatic clause into the offer of your rental property. Now, it's not guaranteed that this will be accepted, but it's something that you can definitely put in your offer and then negotiate. So just that you're aware that that's a possibility as well. Now, here are some other things that you can consider. First off, smoking. So living in the Netherlands, it is absolutely illegal to smoke inside a property. So if you are a smoker, or if you enjoy having parties, whenever we can start having get-togethers again, or you've got friends who like to smoke, it might be a thought for you to start thinking about whether you would like to have an outside space. So whether it be a balcony or a small garden, something that wouldn't mean that you'd have to ask everyone to go on the streets if they wanted to have a cigarette. If you are a smoker, like I said, it is illegal to smoke inside a building, so do make sure that you have an outside area if desired. And we'll move on to pets. So pets, it's not impossible to rent with pets. I'm personally renting and I have a cat, so it's not impossible, but it can be a bit more difficult. So when you're looking at a furnished property, a lot of the time they will say pets are not allowed because obviously the landlord and the agent want to make sure that the sofa won't be scratched up, for example, and to keep the furniture as clean as possible. You can, of course, get some furnished properties that will allow pets. They are few and far between, and I might say that the furniture is not as nicely kept as one might want it to be. But like I said, it's not impossible. Anything might pop up, but it's significant. It will be significantly harder and might not be the quality that you'd be expecting. And when it comes to renting with pets, we say, so we've had a client who came over with 3 dogs and 2 cats. It was very difficult to find them an apartment. We eventually did, so it worked out well. It did take longer and it did take some negotiations, but it was possible. But anything upward of 2 pets is when it starts to get very difficult, very difficult. And also the larger the pet, the harder it is to find an apartment. So just be aware of that. So the less pets and the smaller the pets, the easier it is. Obviously, the more pets and the bigger, the harder. And also, if you do have a lot of big pets, it might be best to, only look at unfurnished or shell properties. So just something to consider. The third thing I will mention now is children, of course, more important than pets, some would say. Oh, so sorry, just let me my phone call. There you go. And yes, so children. School here starts in the Netherlands when children are 4 years old, and unlike in the UK anyway, your child won't be guaranteed a spot in the school that is close to your house, that's in the same neighborhood. It's all based on how much space there is at the school. So if you really want to make sure that you live near the school that your children are going to, for ease of play dates and just for general ease, it might be a case of starting searching for your school first before looking for the apartment. So that's something for you to think about. I know one of my colleagues, she's got 2 daughters and she lives very close to her school, and she's often said, like, oh, if I had school at if my kids had school at the other side of Amsterdam, I'd be so much more fit, just constantly cycling back and forth for the play dates and the school days. But that's just something for you to consider as well. So if you want to be close to the school, have a think about looking at the school before looking at your property. And the fourth I'm going to mention is, of course, your budget. So there's a general rule that we abide by here in the Netherlands called the 3 times rule, which essentially means that your gross monthly salary should equate to 3 times the rental price of your property. Now, the idea behind this theory is, so a third of your income should go to your rent, a third of your income should go on utilities, food, health insurance, general things you need to live, and then the third is for your fun. So in that respect, do try and think of that whilst pricing out your budget. So if you're on a slightly lower income, then maybe make sure that your budget can be in line with that. But then on the flip side, if you've got a very high income, you obviously want to make sure that you aren't going for a very low budget property. A lot of landlords and agents will say that you wouldn't be acceptable because they'd want someone who actually needs to have that lower budget property. So something that they would actually need. And if you can afford more, then you should afford more. So that's a nice way that they're trying to balance out the housing market. But that's just something to think about. I'm just going to quickly read you through some top tips now. So if registering is not possible, as I've said before, it's a sublet. Please steer clear, don't get in trouble, make sure you can register at your property. Written offers that are accepted are legally binding once they have been accepted, and you can be fined for backing out. So if you were to find 2 properties that you liked and that you couldn't choose which one you'd want, if you were to put 2 offers, if you were to put an offer on each of them and they were to both be accepted in writing, then you could get in trouble in that the landlord or agent could ask you as the fine to spend 1 month's worth of rent. Obviously, it's at the discretion of the agent and the landlord, but they can fine up to 1 month's rent for backing out of an offer that's already been accepted. So we'd always say, please do not put more than 1 offer on at a time. If you do have 2 offers on, please hope that one of the agents will get back to you first, and then that way you can call them to cancel the offer before call the other ones before the second offer is accepted, to make sure that you don't get that fine. So if you've said it, if you've just said it, then it's fine. But as soon as it's been accepted in writing, it is your responsibility. The next thing is landlords can't simply evict you, so know your rights. So yeah, as long as you're following the contract, as long as you're paying your rent on time, you're looking after the property and just living normally, then they can't evict you. They can't simply say, oh, I want to move back, if that's not in your contract clause. When it comes to staying at your rental property, when it comes to minor and major repairs, the general rule is anything up to 100 euros is the tenant's responsibility. So for example, changing light bulbs, cleaning your windows, for example. When I say cleaning your windows, you'll have, obviously it's very high up here, so you'll have window cleaners who will come and help clean the windows, but that would be a responsibility. But when it comes to larger maintenance, for example, servicing the boiler, that should be all on the landlord, not you. Another thing to look out for is rent that can be increased yearly if it's mentioned in the contract. And most increases are regulated and linked to inflation. So be mindful of this. So it is very common, more common than not, to have it in the contract that your rent can increase. I think it's by 1.2%. It's a small percentage, but that it can indeed increase. But only with inflation. So they can't say, oh, within a year it'll be increased by 50%. That's unheard of and would absolutely be fought against. So don't be concerned about that. And again, don't be concerned if you do see that the rent can increase yearly, because that's very common practice here. Another thing to think about is taking out liability insurance, home contents insurance, and legal insurance. The one that I would definitely say without a doubt that you should go for, no matter what your situation is, go for the liability insurance. Absolutely. This is about €3.50 per person, so very cheap, and it will cover you for any damage that you have done in anything, pretty much. So say, for example, if you were cycling and you accidentally cycled into a parked car and dented the window, liability insurance would cover that. And yeah, so liability insurance is very cheap and very safe to have. I'd absolutely recommend that. Home contents insurance and legal insurance are, of course, great to have. Would recommend that you get them too, but the only one that I really think you should absolutely get is the liability insurance, for sure. And the final thing I'm going to quickly mention is makelaars. That's the Dutch word for the real estate agents. They should not be charging you a fee unless you have specifically asked for the help. So bear this in mind when it comes to anything in the Netherlands anyway. If you have not specifically asked someone for their help, you should not be paying a fee. Occasionally you'll get agents who request a fee simply to view a property before even, yeah, in order to just view the property, which is absolutely illegal. I think it was a week and a half ago now, maybe 2 weeks ago, that the government has actually cracked down on this, and those estate agents have now been fined, which we're very happy about, because they were making things very difficult for a lot of people. So we're happy that that's now been brought to light, but just be aware some estate agents might try to charge you a fee, but if you haven't asked for it, fight against it, because you shouldn't be paying for anything you haven't specifically asked for. Here are now some useful links for you to do some research on. So first off, the municipality, also known as the gemeente in Dutch, which is where you register at the address, and this is where you'd also pay taxes. So that's the gemeente for you. There's in Amsterdam, which is an expat desk, where you can register. It's also great for immigration purposes, and you can also get your BSN there. And in Amsterdam are very easy to work with because they work specifically with expats. So they're good people to go to. The is the immigration department, and WOON is a non-profit. WOON is an institute for questions, complaints, and anything else that you might have about renting. So you can go onto their website and ask any questions that you might have, and then they will help you out. So say, for example, if there was something in your contract that you weren't entirely sure about, or if your landlord did something questionable, for example, saying, oh yeah, he wants to move back at a certain date, even though that's not in your contract, you can always go to WOON and look for advice. Now, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccines coming out, but we're still in the corona crisis. So how has that affected the rental market? Not that much, not that much. Here are some of the main points that we've seen. So now you can't do group viewings anymore. Of course, there are no more open houses. So viewings are done in person or in video, but if they're done in person, it should only be you and your partner. I think it's a maximum of 2 people, unless of course you have a small child, but as few people as possible. And you can also do video viewings now, so that's good to know. Negotiating is possible on higher properties, but when I say higher end properties, probably closer to the 3,000 mark, obviously because people aren't wanting to rent luxury apartments at this point, or people are not able to, sadly. But competition is still high on properties under 1,400, so there's not room for negotiating on the kind of mid to lower range of rental properties. Watch out for short-term rentals, of course. Make sure that you can register at any of these properties, and make sure that all the contracts are legal, of course. Some people might have wanted to move home temporarily because of the crisis and are therefore trying to rent out their properties, not necessarily legally, and for short-term. So if you do find a short-term let, just make sure it's legal, make sure you can register. If you are in any financial trouble, just talk to your landlord. Most of the time, they will be understanding. Communication is key, and landlords are people too. So don't be afraid to just ask them questions. If in doubt of anything to do with their property, I'm sure they'd be happy to help you. I'm going to walk you through our service packages. So we offer 3 service packages, which might be helpful to any of you at this point. So there's the basic package, which is more for people, I'd say people who have already been to Amsterdam. They kind of know the market, they know the areas, and are fairly independent, but just want more help on the admin side. So when it comes to this, you will have access to the rental, to a rental expert. So one of our expat rental managers, who you'll be able to contact throughout the whole housing process, of course, during office hours. And then we will provide you with guides and checklists. So say, for example, going to the viewings, we've got guides and checklists to make sure that you know what to look out for, what questions to ask. Same goes for searching. We've got a guide on how to do your search and things to look out for, things to avoid. And same for conducting your own check-in as well. So we'll provide you with those guides and checklists. Once you've found a property that you would like to put an offer on, you can then let us know, and we would submit that offer on your behalf. And then we will then, once that's been accepted, we will then review the contract to make sure it's all legal and as it should be. And then once that's being completed, we will then also set up your utilities for you, which would be gas, water, electrics, TV, and internet. So for the basic package, that is €500 and 99 cents. That's already including VAT. We do require a €99 deposit at the beginning of the process, which is then deducted from the final cost. So €500 and 599 euros is the total cost of the package. For the Smart, that's our next level up. So it's got everything that the basic package has, apart from, at this point, we will do a search on your behalf based on the criteria that you have spoken to your personal expat rental manager about. And then we'll also schedule the viewings for you on your behalf as well. So then you just simply need to turn up. But again, you'll have your guides and checklists so that when you're doing the viewings, you will know what questions to ask and what things to look for and what things to avoid. And then that is €999, again, including tax. so 999 total. And then we do require a deposit of 199 euros at the beginning of the process, which is then deducted from the final cost. And then moving on to our third and most complete package is the complete package. So this has everything that the Smart package has, apart from we will attend the viewings with you, and we will also attend the check-in with you. So what we found recently with COVID, of course, people are coming over and having to quarantine. Some expats would prefer to just move directly into their apartment. So at this point, we've been able to do virtual property housing searches for them by using the complete package, as we've been doing video viewings on their behalf, and the clients have either been live on FaceTime for the video viewings, or we've done pre-recorded, whichever is best for them, of course. And then we can also do the check-in on their behalf as well. So at the check-in, we will make sure that everything is recorded. So say, for example, if there's a scratch on the wall, we'll make sure that that is recorded so that the client isn't held liable at the end of the tenancy. And then we'll pick up the keys on their behalf, of course. And then once the client is ready to arrive in Amsterdam, we will just schedule a time to hand over the keys and they can just check right in. We do also do them in person though. Something that I would always recommend is, if you can view your apartments before moving in, please view the apartment before moving in, because obviously we will do the videos as detailed as possible. We do make sure to get the entrance, and we do make sure to get some street view as well, but you never really fully get a feel for the apartment unless you've actually been there. So it would be my preference to always go and view one, but if your situation dictates that you should do it virtually, we can absolutely do that too. So for the complete package, this is 1,999 euros total, again including tax, and we require a 299 euro deposit at the beginning of the process, which is then deducted from the final invoice at the end of the process. Now, if you're not sure if you want to buy, maybe you're looking to buy, we also provide buying services, but we also provide free buying webinars similar to this, but of course with members of the buying team. If you're looking, we've also recently just expanded to Rotterdam, which is very exciting for us. So our first buying in Rotterdam webinar will be tomorrow. And then if you're looking for general buying in the Netherlands, there's one on the 5th of May. Or if you want specific in Eindhoven, there's one on the 20th of May. You can find these all on our website or via Eventbrite as well, or also on our Facebook. I was Mary. I am the operations officer at Expat Housing Network. I hope you found this helpful. Like I said, this has been recorded, so this will be sent to you guys. So if you want to have a quick rewatch, if there's anything you think you've missed, you can always have a rewatch of this. And in the meanwhile, if you've got any questions or anything else, feel free to send them through to welcome@ehn.works. All right, let's see. I've got 2 questions in the Q&A. Feel free to add any more that you've got, of course, and I will answer these as best I can now. If they want to open, stop the share. Here we go. I've got one from anonymous attendee. Is it possible to have remote viewings, sign contracts prior to moving to the Netherlands? So yes, it is absolutely possible to have remote viewings. That's absolutely fine. And you can sign the contract as well from abroad. Now we're doing DocuSign a lot of the time, of course, because of the pandemic. Even though the pandemic was a big hindrance, it has definitely modernized the way we work. So it is absolutely possible to do that. And then you can just, we would organize time with you to then hand over the keys, for which you can just check in directly. The next one is also from anonymous attendee. For the Smart package, can you do remote viewings if we are not currently based in Netherlands? So we would not be able to attend them for you. That is only part of the complete package, I'm afraid. However, what we have had, one of our recent clients actually had some friends in the Netherlands who did the viewings on their behalf. So we would just schedule them for you. Another thing to think about is, occasionally, if you wanted, you can always call the agent beforehand and ask if they might already have a video viewing recorded. But with the Smart package, we will not attend the viewings for you, I'm afraid. And Mihai's got a few questions here. Thank you for these. So let's work through them. So the first one, is it generally harder to find during summer months? You're moving in August. No, it's not generally harder. Something I will say, it does seem busier. It moves a lot faster, but that's just because more people are moving. So more people are moving out. That means more people are looking for houses. Whereas in the winter, of course, less people are wanting to move. So it is a bit slower. But I wouldn't say that it's harder to rent in the summer, it's just a bit faster. Question 2, how long does it take on average to receive a response from the landlord after you apply for a rental? Good question. So this is highly dependent on the landlord, it's highly dependent on the agent as well. It should take a couple of days. It should take a couple of days. Of course, we'll have the odd anomaly who might be very slow at getting back to you no matter how much you try and hound them down, and it can take maybe a week. Sometimes it'll just be within that hour, but I'd say an average is just a day or two maybe. Question number 3, when should I start looking for apartments before my planned move-in date? That's a good question. So if you're looking to move over, then bearing in mind that you need to do a 10-day quarantine still, the rules might change because things are starting to ease up, but at the moment I'd go on the idea that you would still have to do the 10-day quarantine. Keep that in mind. But searching, depending on your criteria, depending on your budget, if you've got a pretty low budget, you might need more time to look. If you've got very specific requirements, you might need more time to look, but I'd say probably around 2.5 to 3 weeks would be safe. Our general internal goal and average that we've found is from search to securing a deal is 2 weeks. But obviously that depends on the housing market at the time, that depends on what's out there, that depends on the client. It can be a one viewing wonder, for example, or they might want more and more searches, in which case it can take a couple months. So it really is dependent, but I think if you're looking with a decent budget and nothing too specific, around 3 weeks should be fine to start searching. Because some things will only be online for a day. That's how quickly the housing market can work. But it's always good to kind of give yourself some time so that you don't have to feel stressed about it. Question number 4, is it a good idea to rent from popular corporations like Holland to Stay without seeing the apartment first? You can. I think this is more personal for me. Like I said, I would always recommend to go and view the apartment first, but it is possible to rent from popular corporations, as long as it's legal, of course, but that is up to you personally. If you would rather wait and have a look at the apartment to really get a feel for it, get a feel for the neighborhood, I'd recommend doing that. But if you're more with the idea of wanting to get an apartment secured and just getting something straight away, then you can go with Holland to Stay without having to view an apartment first. But I would always recommend going to view first. That's just my advice. Question number 5, what are some options for short-term stay while looking for a rental? So we don't specialize in short-term stays. However, there are a couple places which I'd recommend. The first one being Zoku, so that's ZOKU, really gorgeous long-term short-term stay apartments. I think they're award-winning designed, and they've just a really cool place. They've got a great rooftop bar as well, which is really nice. So there's Zoku. There's also the Student Hotel, which, despite its name, is not only for students. You can stay there for a while as well. They are serviced apartments too, and you can also register there too. And there's also Hotel Janssen. So Hotel Janssen is how it would be, JANSEN, Hotel Janssen. And you can also register there. Again, it's a serviced apartment. Number 6, do landlords and companies usually accept cash or international bank transfers for first month and deposit payment? I'm asking because I will not be having a Dutch bank account up until I have rented space, of course. So cash is a lot harder to deal with. You will get some, obviously it's dependent on the agent, it's dependent on the landlord, but cash is generally harder to deal with. And yes, they will accept international bank transfers, but something that I really would like to stress is you do need to have the deposit and the first month's rent payment in the agent's account before your check-in date. So if you are doing an international bank transfer, make sure to give yourself enough time to make sure the money can get through to the account in enough time. So that's something to look out for. It might be up to a week, just to make sure. But again, this is also dependent on the bank and where you are in the world. And also, a little tip on my behalf, if you are in the European Union at this point, you can open an online bank called Book. So it's called BUNQ. And that is a recognized bank in the Netherlands, and you don't need to have your BSN number for it. So you can open up that bank account before coming over if you're in the European Union. So my partner and I actually got Bunk so that we could pay our deposit because we didn't have our BSNs yet. And initially it was only going to be a temporary fix, but we've ended up sticking with them. They're very easy. So yeah, try it out if you're in the European Union. And you're very welcome. Sorry, Mihai wrote thank you. So I just want to say you're so welcome. All right, Dasun, you would like to know, is it usually allowed to bring additional furniture to furnished apartments? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So when it comes to a furnished apartment, you can bring whatever you'd like. Once you've moved in, the apartment is technically yours until the end of the contract. If you wanted to get rid of some furniture that was already there, then you need to do this in consultation with the landlord, of course, because that is still the landlord's property. You're just renting it off them, but you're allowed to bring whatever you would like to the furnished apartment. That's up to you. Unless it's very invasive. So just a quick thought. So unless you had to fully install it, then that would need to be in consultation with the landlord. So say, for example, if you're going to be doing big drilling work or something, I don't know what it might be, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. If it's invasive, ask the landlord just to be safe. But if it's just movable furniture, you can bring whatever you'd like. All right. I've got a couple questions here in the chat now as well. So Gurkhan would like to know, does long-term Airbnb booking require registry? So you need to, if you're going to be living here, you need to be able to register within 3 months. You cannot register at Airbnb. Another thing that I'd like to mention is Airbnb isn't that well looked upon, and it isn't as available in other countries as it is in Amsterdam. There was a big crackdown a couple years ago where for the tourist industry, people were trying to actually ban Airbnb. So Airbnbs will be fewer and further between to find and significantly more expensive. It's not impossible, of course, just giving you a pre-warning. But yeah, you wouldn't be able to register at an Airbnb. So I don't think you'd be able to stay there very long term. And Andrea would like to know, says you have to go, but unfortunately, thank you so much. You're so welcome. Thank you for joining. And I hope this was helpful. Are there any more questions before I start to sign off? Anything else you'd like me to go through? I'll just wait a couple minutes in case you want to type. Okay, I think this is coming to an end. So as I said, if you have any further questions, Marcio, are we getting this video recorded per email? Yes, we'll be sending you this video per email. So we'll be sending that to you, I believe, tomorrow. That'll be on the marketing team, but they're very fast. So I'm very sure they'll send it through to you tomorrow. And if you have any questions in the interim, please feel free to send an email at welcome@ehn.works. And I'll reply to you as best I can. All right, thank you guys so much for joining. I hope you found this useful. I wish you the best of luck with your relocation. It's a very exciting and very stressful time, but it'll be great. Once you get here, you'll love it. I know I do. So have a great evening, best of luck, and yeah, hopefully speak soon.